Positively Kansas is made possible in part by Nueco Solutions of Kansas City, your source for liquidation merchandise at nueco.com, bringing you this week's My American Dream segment.
The following program is brought to you by TZ Productions, celebrating KPTS's nearly 50 years of community support in South Central Kansas. Great starts here on KPTS.
Brought to you by Central Security Group, your experts in home automation, security, and peace of mind. View video on your smartphone and control your home's lights, locks, heating, cooling, and more. Security app compatible with Apple Watch and Amazon Echo.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, dramatic moments await these Navy men who will soon board the new USS Wichita battleship. Learn what makes this crew special and why the air capital plays such a prominent role on the high seas. Also, this Halstead man reaches a milestone in his creative career that gives the folks in Halstead a chuckle every week. You'll see what it's all about. Plus, you won't find art that's any more Kansas than this. Marian Vavra's bread and butter is turning wheat stalks into beautiful creations. We'll also show you how to spy on Kansas wildlife from the comfort of your very own car in our Wild Edge report. Sit down and get comfy. It should be a great show. Another edition of Positively Kansas starts right now. Protecting our nation not only from the air, but also from the sea. Wichita gets huge props for this role in our national defense. The latest development is a new battleship bearing the Wichita name. Members of its crew recently visited the namesake of their new vessel as they prepare to head off for adventure on the high seas. Anthony Powell shows us why the air capital is such a big deal on the open water.
September 2016, Marinette, Wisconsin. Another chapter in the storied history of the USS Wichita unfolds as the latest battleship bearing the city's name is christened. The military gives ships names that it feels best represent America, and it believes there's no better representation of the heartland than Wichita. On this ceremonial day, associations of Wichita were everywhere. Kay Lair, the ship's sponsor, is the wife of legendary journalist Jim Lair, a Wichita native, whose father owned the Kansas Central Lines bus company. Mementos from Wichita, like this bus, will adorn the ship once she is given final approval to become operational in the Navy's fleet. That's scheduled for late 2018. The 378-foot ship will be in the thick of battle if needed. She'll be equipped with weapon systems, a flight deck, and hangar. An all-around arsenal to support the men and women on the front lines. Of course, a ship is only as good as its crew, and recently, a few of the men who will be calling the USS Wichita home visited its namesake, so they could attach the ship's name with the face of Wichita. The pride residents have for having a ship named for their city immediately felt by crew members.
This city is great, absolutely phenomenal. We've had multiple events with the community, and everybody has treated us great. I don't think that we could have asked for a better city to represent one of our United States ships. It's great.
The patriotism is amazing, and we've observed with other branches of the military and interacting with them in the events that we've done, it's nothing but support.
These sailors say the unbelievable reception they received in Wichita will give them added inspiration once they climb on board the battleship for official duty. The current USS Wichita is actually the third battleship to bear our city's name. The first was a heavy cruiser that earned 13 battle stars during World War II. Then during the Vietnam War, the second USS Wichita earned 4 battle stars as an oil replenisher. In the ferocious Second World War, the USS Wichita was in the heat of battle, including Okinawa, where she backed troops going ashore with gunfire. In Vietnam, she supplied fuel to ships engaged in fighting. The legacy of the USS Wichita is certainly not lost on current crew members or Kansans.
It feeds into many of the Navy traditions that we carry. So a lot of the heritage and a lot of things that we carry out from day to day, we carry with a lot of pride and go forth and execute and try to make the people before us proud.
But you don't see a lot of cities named after, or having ships named after them. You see a lot of, frequently more states and individuals, famous individuals like President Eisenhower.
So from World War II to Vietnam, and now present day, the USS Wichita has and will continue to play a pivotal role in keeping America safe. And while doing so, uniting the ship's crew and residents of Wichita and other parts of Kansas in pride and patriotism, all while representing America's heartland.
We should have pride. I mean, that's awesome. How many cities don't have their name on a vessel in the Navy?
For Positively Kansas, I'm Anthony Powell.
One reason the USS Wichita is so critical to the Navy's fleet is her speed. Despite the ship's 378-foot length, she can cruise at more than 40 knots, enabling her to get to battle zones quickly if necessary. There's something special about every small town across the Kansas countryside. Jim Grayway recently stumbled upon something interesting in the Harvey County Independent newspaper that you certainly don't see everywhere. He decided to investigate. Take a look at what he found.
I am in Halstead, Kansas, population 2,000 plus. This may seem like any town USA, and in a sense it is, and that's part of its charm. But there is nothing generic about this little Harvey County burg.
There comes a time in a man's life when he's got to quit rolling around like a pinball.
Halstead got worldwide exposure in the 1950s as the shooting location of the Hollywood blockbuster movie Picnic, starring William Holden. And now Halstead continues to stand out from the crowd thanks to its community-minded newspaper and this man. By day, Christian Clofer works as a mild-mannered maintenance technician for the Halstead School District. That's how he pays the bills. But there is a whole other side to this guy.
I'm sort of a comedian, artist.
Christian is Halstead's very own cartoonist. His weekly comic strip in the Harvey County Independent has been entertaining local readers for 5 years.
I hope that I can give people a distraction from maybe things that are going on in the world or their own life.
The Independent recently published Christian's 200th strip.
They're two blobs and one goes to the other. I caught a talking sea bass. And the other's like, really? Yeah, he was this big. And then off camera, you know, there's the voice bubble that says, I was not.
The comic strip is called Eating Crow, and it features
funny, silly puns, stuff on the top of my head.
And the characters are...
And they're little blobs, you know, two-eyed little alien creatures and robots.
Sometimes it may be a planet and a moon. So I was like, totally. And then Charlene was like, no way. And I was like, oh, no, you didn't. Will you look at me while I'm talking? I can't help it. I rotate.
The characters start to almost have a life of their own.
You'll also see crows from time to time, but the strip really isn't for the birds.
There has been some family members and relatives that I no longer live near that said, you'll never get it published, you'll never amount to anything, you draw like a child. And that's also part of where the term eating crow comes from. They're eating crow, so to speak.
And Christian's success with the strip is made more impressive by the fact that for the past 20 years, he has suffered from severe and debilitating migraine headaches.
It's constant, 24/7. Blackouts, lost my vision, they can't figure out what the problem is.
The migraines also make his hands tremble, making drawing a challenge. But he perseveres and gets it done. The readers of The Independent need their weekly fix of the Eating Crow comic strip. So, Christian is here at the Halstead Public Library creating the next one. Harvey County Independent editor Jared Jansen is looking forward to it. He says it's a great feature that sets his paper apart from the rest.
You might see a political cartoon or something like that, but to have an actual comic strip that is drawn by one of your local residents appear in your newspaper every week, week after week, for getting close to 5 years, that's something that I think is not very common.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I have been told I do a rather decent Julia Child's accent, yeah.
Christian has also branched out into YouTube videos as another way to share his humor. But right now, this is his real bread and butter, and he has a captive audience every week in perhaps the only small-town Kansas newspaper with its own comic strip. In Halstead, I'm Jim Grayway for Positively Kansas.
Christian says he'd like to share his comic strip with other Kansas newspapers, but so far hasn't had any takers. Meanwhile, if you search for Eating Crow Comics on patreon.com, you can subscribe for a couple $1 a month and enjoy all the comics there. All those amber waves of grain produce a lot of food, but there's something amazing you can do with the part of the wheat that you don't eat. Our Positively Kansas intern Mayoni Presley made this discovery near Rose Hill.
You might say the art in Marian Vavra's home near Rose Hill is shocking.
It's been my passion for many, many years.
It doesn't get any more Kansas than Marian's art. She makes crosses, jewelry, baskets, ornaments, and other amazing creations from nothing more than wheat.
Partly I love the feel of the wheat, and I love how it moves, and it just feels good in my hands.
It all started around 1980.
My cousin found a package of wheat in a craft store in Muscatine, Iowa, and she says, oh, let's work on making these together. So it had instructions for 3 Christmas ornaments in this package of wheat. And so she and I and the girls worked our way through that, and it was really a lot of fun.
Over the past few decades, Marian has become one of the most skilled and prolific wheat artists in the Midwest.
Kansas wheat, I think, is the best wheat in the United States. What we grow here, of course, is a product of the soil and the climate and the seed, and the heritage of the seed. And it is beautiful. And the glow that you see on all of it, that comes from the plant itself. I have not added anything shiny to make it shiny. What you see is the result of growing here in Kansas.
Marian says this kind of craft was popular in the 1970s, but then lost favor for some reason. Marian also shares her skills with the community by giving demonstrations at Expiration Place once a week. And she also wrote a book.
The other thing that we've done a lot to help preserve this is to write down instructions on how to make things. And for all of our workshops, even on the national level, we create instructions for every project that we do. And so we put together workbooks for a convention, or so like for myself, in my book, I have the instructions on how to make everything that I show in the book.
Marian also uses her talent to express her Christian faith and help others heal by presenting them with handmade art with a very personal touch.
I've been getting phone calls from farm families who want to preserve the last harvest of their loved ones in a special way. And so what has happened in families is everyday life, and sometimes they lose the husband or the farmer to an illness or an accident, and they have the last harvest and they want something special. So I've worked with about 5 different people this past year for mementos that I can make for them that have meaning to them. The ability to always do something new or different with wheat is amazing to me. And that's how I've done it for so many years, because it doesn't get old. I'm not doing the same thing over and over again, and I can create, and so it just kind of feeds my soul, if you will.
Marian's art has a way of captivating and intriguing people she encounters. She continues to make sure her wheat-centered art form lives on. Near Rose Hill, I'm Mayoni Presley for Positively Kansas.
You can buy Marian's book on Amazon and buy her art online. Just start Googling and you'll find the websites. Some Kansas youngsters may be the next generation of history detectives. You've probably seen the show on KPTS, where a team of historians solve historic mysteries across the country. It's a fascinating show. Well, 12-year-old Lucy Buller and Abby Kuntz and 14-year-old Caleb Kuntz have conducted their own history investigation. They made some eye-opening discoveries about conflict that existed in the Newton area back 100 years ago relating to war and faith. For example, there's a story of John Schrog, who was almost lynched for refusing to carry the American flag on Armistice Day in a parade to celebrate victory in World War I. As a Mennonite, Schrog was a pacifist, just like these three young historians. That was just one example the kids discovered of conflict in their community between Mennonite conscientious objectors and those who supported national war efforts.
I think what shocked me the most is what people had to go through and like the reason they even had to go through it.
The three combed through old newspaper and historical archives and interviewed relatives and community members and created a website detailing the accounts of Mennonite conscientious objectors in central Kansas during World War I. These kids entered it in a National History Day contest and took second place in Kansas. That was good enough to earn them a trip to the national competition in Washington, D.C., and there, out of 98 teams, they finished in the top 10. Here they're wearing their medals. Congratulations to Caleb and Abby Kuntz and Lucy Buller from Newton for doing Kansas proud on the national stage and keeping history alive, so we're not doomed to repeat it. Now to a story first reported in the Annandale Clarion newspaper that caught our eye. It's about this young woman named Wilma Guy. Wilma is 93 and lives in Colwich. And she isn't spending her golden years twiddling her thumbs. She's keeping busy crocheting booties for babies.
Like I said, it keeps me out of trouble.
Wilma turns out a couple pairs every day of this stylish footwear for newborns. Then she donates the booties to Wichita's Birthline Pregnancy Clinic.
Women come in there for pregnancy checks. And if they have a positive check, then they give them a pair of booties. So they realize they're really going to have a baby. They say that's that baby's first gift.
The clinic recently picked up 103 pairs from Wilma. She says she's made thousands over the past decade. You can see these are no run-of-the-mill dollar store booties either. Wilma takes great care to make every pair special. They're just beautiful, as you can see. While Wilma takes no great credit for what she's doing, friends and family say she's proving that age is no barrier to being relevant and helping make the world a better place. Well, one of the best places to be, according to journalist Mike Blair, is the great outdoors. But even if you're not the adventurous outdoor type, you can still enjoy the wilds of Kansas from the comfort of your very own car. Mike shows us how in this week's edition of Kansas Wild Edge.
The Midwestern U.S. is blessed with an abundance and variety of wildlife. Vast grasslands, varied topography, and the Central Flyway combine to blend native and migrant wildlife viewing opportunities into some of the world's best. And no matter what your interest, seeing wild animals that share our space is a special joy. Whether it's watching animals at play, seeing rare species, glimpsing youngsters, or watching the behaviors and interactions of shy wild neighbors, seeing wildlife teaches us more about life and reminds us of Earth's beauty. Close encounters are always worth sharing. Fortunately, you don't have to be an expert outdoorsman to see wild animals. Many public lands are designed to concentrate wildlife for great viewing opportunities. These allow auto tours, where binoculars or spotting scopes can turn good viewing opportunities into great sightings. And modern devices such as small digital collars or even cell phone apps can help call wild animals out of cover and into open settings for easy viewing or photos. Keep animal needs in mind when looking for wildlife. On hot days, many concentrate around water to drink and stay cool. Early and late in the day, animals often feed in open areas. Watch crop fields that attract wildlife. Learn about major times of movement. Migration periods bring skies full of travelers, many being temporary guests seen at no other times. Find out where communal animals such as prairie dogs live and visit their towns to see a variety of animals that depend on these wild communities. Move slowly and look closely, for many animals blend almost perfectly with their surroundings and can be hard to see. A longer look can lead to surprising discoveries. Take advantage of the wildlife resources around us. You'll be blessed for what you see. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Love it, love it, love it. Thanks to Mike Blair for that. Now let's go to Macy Johnson with this week's edition of My American Dream.
So I first want to talk about, I know that we grew up together. We grew up and we had lots of fun, but then,
fought a lot.
Yes. We had challenges.
Yeah.
So I really just want to take this time to talk about your experiences and what your perspective was growing up and what were some of the challenges that you felt that I just didn't witness.
So I was in kindergarten, and over the span of 8 months, we were living between 2 homeless shelters and a hotel.
Right.
And so I was uprooted from kindergarten the first semester, and I ended up finishing out the second half of my kindergarten year in Kansas City. And that time right there was really something that stuck out to me because I saw the sacrifices that Mom had to make for us.
Right.
And I saw the ways that she went to the ends of the earth to make ends meet for her children. And at that point, like, I knew that there were certain responsibilities that I would have to assume as a kid, only being 5 years old and having to understand like what it meant to take care of you and also, you know, be a leader and have to hold my head high in the face of adversity.
For you, what was it like, you know, watching Mom struggle? We watched her struggle trying to provide for utilities, and we often didn't get to have the opportunities to attend certain activities in school and everything. So what type of things can you identify?
I think for me I was 8, and I remember I was sitting at the computer one day. I had one of my classmates look over at me and was just like, oh, you take these tests so seriously, like when you read these books and you take your AR test. And I said, I don't know about you, but I'm trying to go to college and get a scholarship.
Right, exactly.
And 8 years old, I knew I wanted to go to college. And that was a very defining moment for me. And for me, I knew at that point that I wanted a better life for myself, and I wanted to break the cycle of generational poverty, and shortly thereafter was when I decided I wanted to become a doctor.
So if there were, you know, younger people that are connecting with your story that might want to go into the medical field, what would you tell them?
If there's any dream that you have, the biggest thing that I would say is your condition is not your conclusion. And I think a lot of times the things that we're born into, we tend to think that our circumstances define us. But if you have a goal, if you have a dream, if there's something that you want for your life, be relentless in striving towards that, and remember that worthiness has no prerequisites, and that you will always be enough for what you've been called to do. There is nothing that you were born into. There's nothing that you could ever go through that can disqualify you from what's yours. And to always remember that and hold that. And if you need help, reach out for help. Never be afraid to think that your problems are too big to talk to somebody about. And I think that those are the biggest things that have carried me very far and to get to where I am today.
Absolutely, that's incredible. I mean, so now that we've gotten to this point, what would you define as your American dream?
My American dream is one where I'm living passionately. I'm doing the things that I'm passionate about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for being a part of this.
You're welcome, sister.
Yes. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. Make sure to tune in to My American Dream.
Thanks, Macy, and thank you for spending this time with us and watching our show. If you have a story idea, send it to positivelykansas@kpts.org. We read every email, and we love seeing what you have to say. I'm Sierra Scott. That's all for this week, but we'll see you again soon for another edition of Positively Kansas. Until then, so long.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Brought to you by Central Security Group, your experts in home automation, security, and peace of mind. View video on your smartphone and control your home's lights, locks, heating, cooling, and more. Security app compatible with Apple Watch and Amazon Echo.
The preceding program was brought to you by TZ Productions, supporting KPTS and the communities it serves in South Central Kansas. Great starts here on KPTS.
Positively Kansas is made possible in part by Nueco Solutions of Kansas City, your source for liquidation merchandise at nueco.com, bringing you this week's My American Dream segment. Support also comes from viewers like you. Thank you. For a free copy of this program, become a new member of KPTS for a $40 contribution. If you are already a member, just send $25 for shipping and handling. Be sure to include the program's name, date, and time.